Welcome to Stories of Brisco and Bradshaw. I would be Bradshaw, and that would be your Chickasha native, your Chickasha Hall of Famer, Oklahoma's favorite son, Mr. Gerald Brisco. And we got a huge treat today. Former fight of the night in the UFC, knockout of the night in the UFC, former New York State champion wrestler. He has won almost every title there is all over the world. He's a former United States champion. He's won a ton of tag team champions and was a member of my tag team partner's sons tag team, which was one of the greatest ones I've seen. RK Bro. He is Mr. Matt Riddle. Matt, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, bro. No, just another day in paradise here in Florida, and I get to share it with you two fine gentlemen.
Well, thank you so much, Matt. You mentioned you're over in Orlando, man. We talked a little bit earlier about the flying in and out of Orlando, the same things that we see there. But we got you here. You're settled down, and you're home and home for a while anyway. But Matt, it's always a pleasure to have you here. Thanks so much for joining us here. But let's get this thing rolling if you don't mind here. Matt, you and I go back to when you very were first starting in the business. We met up in Philadelphia with our good friend at the Monster Track, Danny Cage, and you got some of your training up there from Danny there. But tell us, I know before pro wrestling, there was another side of Matt Riddle where you're in the MMA field. What made you decide to go into the MMA, and what was the point where you decided you want to be a professional wrestler?
Well, I think growing up, I fell in love with professional wrestling probably around 6 years old, and that's what I really wanted to pursue. But as I got older, I realized, they don't let kids just do professional wrestling in school. So I joined the amateur wrestling team in Saratoga Springs High School, and I had, and I fell in love with it. It was the closest thing I could get to professional wrestling, and it was awesome. And I wrestled throughout high school, won states, won nationals, then wrestled Division One in college at East Stroudsburg University. Unfortunately, my time there was kind of cut short. My coach had to resign because he did a couple things in the sense of helping us make weight. I'm not going to go into detail, but he resigned. A bunch of us lost scholarships, and I was kind of in limbo. And at that time, I actually thought about going into professional wrestling because I was about 19, 20, and I was like, like maybe I could, get into it. But I looked at the landscape. I felt like I wasn't big enough and I didn't have enough of a persona yet or a character. And but mixed martial arts was right there. I had the amateur background, and it just felt right place, right time. The Ultimate Fighter season one just aired. I was a freshman in college, and it was the fastest growing sport in the world. And they have weight classes, so I knew I could probably fit in either a middleweight or welterweight or light heavyweight. I'd make it work at one of those weight classes, and I kind of pursued that. And like I said, I love professional wrestling. I love fighting. It's like I think a lot of people go into fights with ill will towards other people. I just love the sport, the combat aspect of it. I usually fight with a smile on my face, not because I'm cocky or arrogant, but because I'm having a good time. I'm getting to mix it up, and I know I'm not going to get in trouble. I can fight people, spill blood, or get beat up, and we get paid at the end of this. Kind of the same thing with professional wrestling, except for with professional wrestling, I get to be a little more of a character, and I get to do it more than once every 3 months. I get to wrestle sometimes 4 times a week, which for some people they might hate that. But for me, I love it. I think it's like probably the greatest thing about professional wrestling is how active you can be and the longevity in the career, you know?
Matt, you kind of
So
glossed over something that was really big. New York State champion, and one thing I read on the internet, which was pretty cool, and it's on the internet, so it's got to be true. You defeated John Jones twice in amateur wrestling.
yeah, my senior year, I got the upper hand on, John Bones Jones. The guy's a stud. The guy's a go. The guy would
Oh,
probably
that's awesome, though. I mean, it's just awesome you were out there
the guy,
living.
he's a year younger than me, but that guy would probably beat the crap out of me right now. Pretty easy. He grew like another 6 inches, and he's way bigger. But yes, in 2004, Matthew Riddle, if you look at the picture on the podium, I'm in number one spot. won states, pinned the opponent in the finals, the guy who beat John Jones that year. And then earlier in the
Wow.
season, we were at a Christmas tournament where I also won the tournament. So, you know,
Awesome. That's
yeah.
pretty incredible. That's something kind of hard to gloss over. That's just so, especially in a competitive wrestling market like New York. That's
Yeah.
really amazing.
It really is. And my senior year, the year I won, I actually had knee surgery. I tore my meniscus about 4 or 5 weeks before, or maybe 4 weeks before the qualifier, before like we had class A's, then sectionals, then states. So I tore it about 4 weeks before class A's, got surgery, and came back, pinned my way through everything, and then just, won
Wow.
states. So it was it
Yeah.
was a very much so a Cinderella story,
Yeah.
So
Well,
I was
a
pretty stoked.
Cinderella story with a bunch of hard work behind it. You don't win no state championship by being
Dude,
Cinderella wearing a
and I will
glass
say
slipper.
this, every practice, I did the practice hard, and then I would leave, go over to my friend's house and get another workout in,
Yeah.
drink protein shakes, go home,
Wow.
eat dinner, pass out, wake up, do it again.
Very
And
nice.
even when I tore my knee, it didn't stop. I still showed up to practice, did what I could, and still worked out again. And honestly, like you said, the hard work paid off because even with knee surgery, I still
Yeah. Yeah.
crushed it. So it was a good year. 2000, 2003, 2004 were pretty good years. But
Yeah.
hey,
Did you have any other discipline besides amateur wrestling when you got into MMA? Did you do the karate, the judo when you were a
uh
kid?
no, but I will say this. When I was, doing the amateur wrestling in high school and throughout college, I did buy 4 ounce gloves. I bought a couple pairs of them. And me and my buddies after practice, we would, we might put stipulations like, hey, no, like kick their knees to the head, only body shots or something. But we would practice mixed martial arts to the best of our abilities. So I think I had enough like fights like that, because I think a lot of fighters have a lot of street fights or they have a, martial arts discipline. For me, it was amateur wrestling, but I was a fan of pro wrestling, a fan of mixed martial arts. And, I'm big on, I can watch something, see something, and usually duplicate it. So I felt like when I'd watch fighting or say amateur wrestling or jujitsu or judo, and I would see a technique, I would look at it like 3 or 4 times, and then I would go do it, practice it, and I was usually able to, obtain most of that knowledge.
Yeah, when you were coming up, you were watching wrestling, and you were in New York, so obviously you were watching a lot of WWF. Did you have a favorite? Did you see somebody that really kind of tipped your thinking about I want to do this?
Well, I think when I was younger, I was, more into the flashier kind of wrestling. So say like a Rob Van Dam. I was really big into, I really enjoyed his moveset and his martial arts background, being able to throw kicks and also do the flips and his laid back persona. But when it came to WWE, I'd say my top guy was probably Kurt Angle, and I would tell him to his face. Saw him last week in at WrestleCon. He went
He's
over,
mine
gave me.
too.
Yeah, but the guy not only was, creative, but and added submission elements into his, Olympic level wrestling, but it was the intensity. It looked like he wanted to win, tried to win. And I think that's one thing when you have a combat background, even when I go into a professional wrestling ring, I might be fist bumping everybody, riding scooters, doing whatever. But when that bell rings and we're circling up, it gets real. I carry myself a certain way, and I think that goes a long way in in our line of entertainment.
I always thought, Matt, when I was calling your matches that you were different in a good way because the last thing you want to be is cookie cutter, be like everybody else. It always reminded me of Roddy Piper. How Piper was really different, but it just worked, and one of the most over guys in history. Did Roddy have any influence on you, or was that just me looking at it thinking, okay, I know Roddy and I know you, and there's an
You,
association?
you know what? There's a lot of influence from a lot of people, and I'd say Roddy, when it comes to blurring the lines, when I look at like say my character, and even when I look at like the Seth Rollins promo where he said that about my family, I'm going after him, and it's a good way of blurring the lines, and I feel like Piper. He was a showman, but he was great at blurring the lines. And his in ring kind of showed that too, because if you are cookie cutter, it doesn't work. You can't blur lines and be cookie cutter. You gotta kind of blur the lines in your body of work in the ring and on the mic. So yeah, I would say a lot of my things come from Roddy Piper, you know.
Wow.
And when your scholarship ends because your coach gets in trouble at college, and all of a sudden your amateur career is on hiatus, and you decide to go into the UFC, what was the progression? What was the first thing you did? You think, okay, I want to be an
So,
MMA. What's the first thing you do?
well, first thing that happened is I, left college. It was the summer going into, and I didn't know what I was gonna do. Then my girlfriend broke up with me. Then I was working at a 48-hour video, like a Blockbuster, but a
Yeah,
crappier one. I
yeah.
worked at
And have
like
those. I had all those X's on the door too,
yes,
right?
dude. Yeah, well, in the back door it did. I worked at
Yeah.
one of those video stores, and what a wild time that was. But
Wow.
I really didn't have a lot going on, So, and my buddy called me and was practicing jujitsu in upstate New York, where I grew up. And he goes, "Hey, I'm doing jujitsu. I'm training like 4 times a week, and I have a tournament, NAGA, National American Grappling Association tournament, in 2 weeks. Do you want to come up and like help me train because of your wrestling background and maybe compete?" And I was like, you know what? No girlfriend, living on my parents' couch. This job sucks. I was living in rural Pennsylvania, and I was like, you know what, man? I'll see you in like a day. And I moved up there, started. I got a job up there roofing, and I was roofing during the day, doing jujitsu at night. And 2 weeks later, I won my first national title in jujitsu. And
Wow.
then and then I was just like, well, I'm hooked. I got a little title belt, and I'm like, and they give you swords. The jujitsu tournaments give you sweet prizes. Like wrestling, you get a medal, maybe a trophy.
Yeah. If you're
Jujitsu,
lucky.
yeah, jujitsu, you get swords, title belts, TVs. Like they really sweeten the pot. They're a little more expensive to enter, but risk reward, and you could also get your arm broken. But but it was so I started doing that, and then I was like, this is awesome. So I started just jujitsu all the time. I started training like boxing and Muay Thai, but I was mostly focused on jujitsu because of my wrestling background. I knew if I could control where the fight goes with my wrestling, I usually get it to the ground or get on the guy. And if I'm good enough at submissions, I'll probably just tap him out or put him in a position where I can ground and pound him. And that's what I did. And then when I basically won a bunch of grappling tournaments, won a world title, and then I was gonna do another grappling tournament, and the Ultimate Fighter tryouts for season 7 were being held throughout the country, and one was in Newark, New Jersey, and I was like, do I want to do this grappling tournament again, or do I want to try out for the Ultimate Fighter? And I was friends with this one guy. He's a lawyer. He lives in Pennsylvania. He runs a gym called the Rat Pack, and I was training with him and he's like, dude, go for the Ultimate Fighter. And I was like, all right. And I went to the tryout, and the first round was a jujitsu. They randomly number you. They call a random number. They partner you up, and you go for about 45 seconds. And I beat the crap out of a guy in 45 seconds, so that was good. Next round, they have you hit mitts and pads. Did that, and then the last round is interview, which I was not worried about at all. But then the first guy went in, and within probably 40 seconds, he was getting dragged out by security, screaming all sorts of obscenities. And I was like, oh my God, like, what did they do in there? And when I went in there, they basically started talking crap, saying like they banged my mom and all this other stuff. And I just threw it back at them. I didn't get mad. I didn't like throw a chair. I just started talking trash back. And they all started giggling and laughing. And they're like, perfect. That's what they're looking for. If you're going to be in a house with 15 other cage fighters for 8 weeks, you got to be
Mm.
able to dish it out and take it back. You can't just fight everybody every second. So that was basically the interview process. And then
Were,
I
were
was
there a lot of were there a lot of fights at the house?
no, a lot of trash talk, a lot of, because at the end of the day, and this is how I feel as well. If you're a professional fighter, and I feel like MMA has changed over the course of time, like I feel like it's a little more thuggish now than it was. Even though it's cage fighting, it's very thuggish indeed. But I felt like there was a respect. Like I had respect for the UFC, I had respect for the coaches, I had respect for myself and my other fighters. Where I would never fight somebody in the house. I might talk trash, I might disrespect somebody, I might even, throw fish or steak in somebody's shoe and put it under their soul and not tell them and call them surf and turf. These are things I might do, but I'm not gonna like get into a fist fight in the house and start problems and get arrested or cause problems for the production team. But no fights really in the house, just a lot of trash talk and a lot of tomfoolery.
You described fish underneath the sole with incredible detail, and you said it's something I might do.
I do.
So there's this guy named Jeremy May, and he was on the show. And the guy, if there was a fight in the house, we all would have jumped to this guy. He was the worst. And one day he was, being obnoxious. So me and my one buddy went into his room, and I had a piece of raw steak and a piece of raw fish, and I opened up his Nikes or what Under Armour shoes, whatever he was wearing, and I put fish under the one sole and steak under the other. And then he would wear the shoes and work out in them and stuff. And he stunk, We'd call him Surf
No
and Turf.
kidding.
Yeah, he had raw meat in his shoes,
Yeah.
and we'd call him Surf and Turf, and he never knew why. Until the show aired, and then I would imagine he was like, "What the hell," But he was a real jerk.
You glossed over something again. You said, and then I won a world title. Then I went, you won a world title. I mean, you're glossing over some pretty important things here.
You just don't waltz over. You just don't waltz over that, right, John? I want a world
That's right.
title.
If I won a world title, I would stop and make everybody listen. I won a world title. Did you
Well,
hear
I
that?
thi-
Did everybody hear that?
Yes. Well, I'll say this. I think when there's just so many things like state and national titles in high school, that's awesome, right? Like most
Yeah.
people plateau there. And then say you go into the jiu-jitsu national world titles, and then it's like, plateau there. But I mean, we still got layers. We got UFC, Ultimate Fighter, Fight of the Night, Submission of the Night, and then my run on the Indies, then in WWE, then so I feel like, I don't know. I feel like life is a circle, right? Other people explain it like that. And I just feel like it's just, every notch in the belt, everything it's just a full circle until it gets to that peak, And I don't know what that peak will be, but I don't want to talk as if everything's the peak, I feel like tomorrow's the peak. This interview right now is the peak. So, yeah, but yes, world title, great competitors. The first time I went to the Worlds, I actually took second. I lost to a guy named Nolan Dutcher to a heel hook, and I was furious. But yeah, and the thing is, I can also say, like, in that like 8 months, 9 months when I first started competing and doing jujitsu, I probably had 120 matches in 9 months. Yeah, like every tournament. And trust me, there were some national tournaments. I won the first two, but then lost the third one and didn't place at all. So, but my record was like 120 and like 10, or maybe 108 and 10, something like that. I know I only had like 10 losses. I remember the losses.
You remember those losses better than no victory, don't you?
Always. In the UFC, I can remember every second of a loss. Wins are cool, but like, the losses you remember. The hard days are what you remember, not the easy ones.
Yeah, even when you were a sophomore or freshman in high school, you remember those losses, and you remember the dude that beat you and why he beat
Dude.
you.
Oh, I did. You sure did.
Yeah. So, Matthew, what are your specialties? It seemed like it was fight of the night there. What kind of separated you from the other guys? Your grappling skills or your what?
I would say when it comes to getting fight of the night, I mean, I think you need to want it. You need to be in the ring with somebody else that wants it. And for me, I felt like I just knew because I could control fights with the takedown and with my grappling ability, and I don't know how good it is now. I mean, I still haven't been knocked out, but I had a really good chin. Even back then, it's like I think it was one of my attributes, like big, strong, good wrestler, good chin. So I could take a licking and keep on ticking. So when it comes to getting fight of the night, I feel like that's a very important aspect. If you just beat somebody up, which I've done before, you don't really get fight of the night. It has to be back and forth, tit for tat. And getting fight of the night's not the easiest thing to do, but it is also the most exciting thing to do, you know? And I think for me, uh, I was tired of just ground and pounding and getting the win, you know, and I wanted to add some excitement. And the first time I went for a fight of the night was GSP versus Koscheck 2 in Montreal. And I just had my twin daughters, and Dana White came in the locker room, was like, this is the biggest game, biggest show we've had yet. $100,000 bonuses.
Wow.
And dude, this is 2010. 2010, $100,000 bonus to a dude that just had two kids. Bro, this is gonna change my life. Like, and I was like, I gotta go for knockout, submission of the night, fight of the night. I'm just gonna go. And if you watch that fight from 2010 against Sean Pearson, I did not use any technique. I did not sweat the technique. I went out there swinging for the fences, going for everything and anything. I was like, I got punched a whole bunch. I punched him a whole bunch, though, too. And I was just like, dude, I need money. I need it. And unfortunately, I lost that fight. But the UFC saw how hard I fought and was going for fight of the night. And they re-signed me to a new deal for more money. And then after that, I was like, oh man. And then my next fight, I did the same thing. I just went out there swinging, going for fight of the night, and got fight of the night. And not only did I lose that fight as well, split decision, but I got a new contract for more money and I got fight of the night bonus. So then I was starting to see a pattern. I was like, wait a second. I don't think they really care if you win. They just want really exciting fights. Kind of like WWE. You don't need to win every match. But if
Yeah.
you're one of the best in the world and people want to come and watch you do your thing, you're valuable, right? So that's kind of the track I went on in the UFC. And I was kind of, instead of fighting for wins, I was fighting and hunting for bonuses because I would show up and maybe get 10,000 to show, 10,000 to win. But if I get that bonus, I'd make $80,000. So even if I just get my show money, that's 90 compared to 20.
Right.
Right? That's a no-brainer with math.
Yeah,
So that's how I
exactly.
started fighting. And I was not like I was getting yelled at or being like, we're going to let you go. They were re-signing me to more fights and more money. By the time I did get let go, I was making like 25 and 25. But that was that. And then, funny enough, when I won fights, they never re-signed me for more money. They were just like, that
Wow.
was it. So
Yeah.
that's just how it goes, you know. But it was a
It,
good time.
it kind of sounds to me like you figured that sports entertainment out real quick, and even in MMA, you knew you had to be an entertainer out there.
And that's the thing. Even when I bring up or when I was fired, you know, and then people were like, "How did they fire you?" You know, for medical marijuana when other people were assaulting their wives and doing cocaine. And I'm not going to mention names, but people were living wild. And I go, well, honestly, they brought more money into the company. They brought enough money and enough value where it outweighed some of the things they did publicly, or privately. So I think people have to realize, even if it's football, baseball, WWE, anything, it's entertainment. And value is weighed differently in different sports and different realms and different avenues. So
Mhm.
What about UFC? UFC in mixed martial arts is you have to know so many different disciplines. I think you guys are the best conditioned athletes on the planet. Was there anything that was hard for you in mixed martial arts, or harder than others? Obviously, wrestling came second nature to you because that's what you had done and been so successful at.
yeah, the hardest thing for me, I would have to say, was kickboxing. So Muay Thai, I had the clinch. I can usually plumb. I can throw knees pretty hard. Elbows are pretty close quarters. You can use collar ties, underhooks, things like that. But so kickboxing and boxing. And wrestling, you don't really have to use head movement. And I would say probably for a good part of my career, my head movement was non-existent. I actually think I did as well as I did because really high level fighters were using techniques to make me move my head certain ways, and I just stood there,
Yeah.
which isn't great. But if you're going against like the world. It's like me wrestling a guy that wrestled varsity. I'll smash him. But some really strong guy that's never wrestled before, he might give me a little weird problem because he's not reacting how a wrestler would react. Kind of like if I box a boxer, I know how a boxer is going to react when he slips my punches and stuff. Wow, like if you're fighting a dude that's never slipped a punch and you like throw it and he just stands there and throws a punch back, you're like, oh, what's he doing? It's not. Certain techniques don't work on certain people because they weren't trained a certain way. Especially lower levels and higher levels. So I'd say striking was probably the hardest thing for me. But at the same time, I think my first fight in the UFC, I broke a dude's jaw in 3 spots and gave him level 3 amnesia. So I could hit really hard. I could, get hit really hard. But I would say my head movement and footwork and accuracy with my strikes were not up to par until probably my last 3 or 4 fights in the UFC. You know.
And all the success you're having in the UFC, did at that point, was professional wrestling just completely in the background? Were you not interested anymore?
No, I think for me, I was watching as a fan, but I think, just like you were in professional wrestling, when you watch it, you love it. But then when you start doing it, you're like, this is what you do. Like I would train jujitsu and fight 6 days a week, sometimes multiple times a day, plus strength and conditioning, And then even when I started, so to be honest, when I fought, I barely watched fights other than my opponent and myself and maybe a couple other ones, but I'd only go to live fights. If it wasn't live, I usually didn't even watch it. And even when I look at professional wrestling, before I started wrestling, I would go to everything, watch everything. And then once I was in it, you don't, and you're focused on this. Like right now, all I do is wrestle. I travel multiple days a week. I'm putting my schedule together, interviews, etc. I'm trying to stay relevant. And even before with the UFC, it was very much the same thing. So I was watching wrestling, but I was very much consumed with the world of mixed martial arts and my 3 kids and everything else that was, life. And even now with professional wrestling, I'm very much invested in professional wrestling. And I occasionally, I'll go to a fight or watch a fight occasionally, but it's hard to watch and be on top of everything.
Yeah.
I've been
When
really
when you were
impressed.
doing
Go ahead, Jerry.
when you were doing the MMA, Matt, who was the guy and how hard did you ever get tagged really hard? Where you holy cow, what am I doing here?
Yeah, I've been hit pretty hard a couple times. Funny enough, the hardest I've ever probably been hit is in practice because I would spar a lot of like light heavyweights and heavyweights like James McSweeney and Forrest Grip and Vanderlei. So I get lit. Gilbert Ivel. Like I've sparred some of the nastiest, meanest heavyweights and light heavyweights in the world, and those are probably the times I've been hit the hardest. Yeah, and usually after I hit them hard. So usually, you're sparring, you crack a guy pretty good. You're like, oh
You
yeah,
know there's a payback
and
coming.
you're like, and then part of you is like, do I let him get it? Because if I don't let him get it, he's gonna get even angrier, and this fight's gonna escalate even more. But I also don't want to just give him the hit. So, and I did. The fight would usually escalate, and but I would say the people that hit me hardest were probably the light heavyweights and heavyweights I sparred, being like high level kickboxers. But I'd also say the hardest the most painful hit that I've ever received in any of my fights happened on the Ultimate Fighter, and it was my second fight, ever in the UFC. And I was fighting this guy Tim Crater, and I was on top beating him up, and he hit me with a butterfly sweep and got full mount with like 40 seconds left. So I was like, okay, I'll survive this 40. We'll just move around, whatever, survive. And as I turned my head to the left, I exposed my right ear. And now I've wrestled my whole life, never got cauliflower ear, nothing. And this dude threw down an elbow so hard, and my ear felt like it exploded. And then I go, oh no, my ear. And I turned to look up, and then he threw another elbow right down on my nose. And I was like, oh my God, this hurts so much. And then the round ended. I got up face full of blood from the nose, and I still have the cauliflower ear. The only time I don't have it on this ear, never got it since. just this one ear from that one elbow from Tim Crater, you know? But that would have to be the most painful, painful shot I've ever received was that ear, elbow to the ear. I was like, oh my goodness. Like it didn't even give me like a flash of light, like a big hit.
Right.
It was a flash of light of pain. Like but most painful hit for sure.
Yeah.
When you got released from UFC, was your plan to work to get back to UFC? Was that the idea that you wanted to do? Was you to go somewhere else in MMA?
Well, the plan was to get back because just kind of like WWE, they're like the NFL football,
Right.
right? And the UFC is the NFL of MMA, So I was definitely wanted to get back, but then shortly after my release, Dana White was on a show on Fox with Chael Sonnen, and he really went in on me. So like he went in, like probably called me a loser 20 times and this, that, and the other thing, and called me a deadbeat dad. Just a lot of mean things. And after I saw that, I was like, oh man, like I guess they're done. Like maybe I can come back. But I think I don't know. I don't know if Dana had dealt with some dudes that used to smoke a little devil's lettuce and they beat him up or something, but he doesn't like my demeanor. He doesn't like how I speak, and he didn't like my character for sure. He liked my fighting ability. He liked me when I was breaking jaws and getting fight of the night, but I don't think he likes me as a human being, which is, what are you gonna do? And he expressed his displeasure with me and fired me. And yeah, so I wanted to get back there, but I also knew it was going to be quite a rocky road. But never
Right.
say never, right? But then when I got onto like, kind of like wrestling, there's WWE, AEW, MLW, there's bigger, better companies, but there's also the indies, the regional circuit. And MMA's regional circuit is brutal. Like and I started mostly, my first pro fight was in the UFC. So when I went back to like, fighting on like the indies of professional fighting, it was very rough. And I mean, like people just smoking in the locker room. Most of the fights happen in states without athletic commission, so people don't have to worry about paying for a bunch of things and taking care of the fighters after the fight. And it was very much a wild, wild west situation. And I was fighting, and basically I would fight for companies or try to, and they would agree to pay me something that they couldn't afford. And then I would be like, I'm not fighting for less than we agreed to. And it was very much that kind of battle for a long period of time. I only had one fight outside the UFC, and I was under contract with Bellator, Legacy FC, Titan FC. I mean, I even had a pro MMA company called Pure MMA. Khabib's first fight in the United States was at my MMA company, Pure MMA. So I was like, there was a lot going on, but you know, eventually what happened was I just felt like I felt like the girl at the ball that had nobody to dance with. I felt like nobody wanted to dance with me. I was too expensive. I was ranked too high for anybody to want to really fight me and for to fight me for a little bit of money. When you're ranked top 10 in the UFC, and the only way you get to the UFC, you don't get there by losing. So if you fight me, you're probably not going to beat me, and you're not going to make that much because they got to pay me to show up. And it was just it wasn't working out. So I
Matt,
was go ahead.
but you said something very important there while you're going along. And the the Indian MMA, I can only imagine because you're fighting guys who aren't really skilled in training, aren't really skilled. They're just badasses, or in their mind think they're badasses, which are very dangerous. People it's like going out. I'd rather wrestle a guy that's had 10 years amateur wrestling than somebody that's never been on the mat before, because you don't know what they're going to do. The guy that's never been on the mat before. So it's the same feeling in MMA, right? When you're fighting these guys on the Indies tour, you just don't know who you have across from you.
You don't, and you got to realize they can look up my tape. They can
Yeah,
look at all this information. I can't with them. Half their stuff's
right.
underground, especially at this time. You know. So It was a dicey icy road, not dicey. It was dicey, but it was icy road to travel. And eventually, what happened with me was I was, a opponent pulled out for a fight. I was kind of in limbo. I'm looking for a paycheck, and the WWE had the network for 9.99, and even on my budget, I could afford 9.99. And it opened up the world of wrestling with Legends of Wrestling, NWA. The amount of shows, and not only that, but all the content. I was able to fall back in love with it fully, and then kind of even get, like, for me now as an adult, not as a child, kind of pick up the backstage, the behind the scenes kind of things. And I was like, you know what? Like this, I kind of like this world. I kind of like everything about it. I've always wanted to do this. And I actually called my lawyer friend, Nick, that told me to try out for the Ultimate Fighter. And I go, hey, Nick, I'm living in Vegas. And I was like, what do you think if I tried to become a professional wrestler? And he goes, Matt, if there's anybody that can do it, it's you. And I moved to Pennsylvania, sold my house in Vegas, and then started training at the Monster Factory. And that's where I met you, Briscoe.
Yeah. Yeah, how did you find the Monster Factory? Was it pretty well? I mean, it's world famous. As they say, it's world famous training facility. And what a
Yeah.
great training facility Danny has. Or shared it with the Paul's World Amateur Wrestling team, got mats, weights, and everything else that you want to train.
Well, I think with me, I moved to the Northeast from the Southwest because the Southwest really doesn't have a professional wrestling scene. It really doesn't have a great amateur wrestling scene. So I moved to the Northwest. Plus, I have family up there, and it just made sense. And when I got there, I lived right by Allentown, so I was going to go to the Wild Samoan School, up there in Allentown. But then I checked that. I went to a couple of their shows, good. But then I went to the ROH dojo. I believe they were in some part of Pennsylvania, right on the border of Jersey. And I went there for a seminar, kind of like a tryout. And that's where I ran into, Damian Priest and QT
Yeah.
Marshall. And they trained at the Monster Factory. And I saw how well they did and how well they were working. And I also looked at their size. They were the size of WWE superstars. They weren't the size of, and it's not a knock to anybody smaller, but like, if I'm trying to get to the top level, I want to work with top guys. And they were at the Monster Factory. I went there, like you said, Danny Cage. I mean, Blue Meanie Brian was there. They had a whole roster of talent. They always had seminars, people like you coming in, and they had wall to wall mats, multiple rings, a whole weight room, and they had more classes and were open more days a week than any other professional wrestling school in the area, or probably in the country for that matter, really. I mean, at that time. And I was like, all right, I signed up, paid my dues, and started training.
You talked about how much you loved amateur training and how you trained all the time. Did you feel the same when you got into professional wrestling ring? I mean, sometimes some guys get into professional wrestling ring and feel like, okay, this is where I belong. Is that how you felt?
It very, very much so. I would say the one thing, and now, I understand it now, but I didn't understand back then. So, like, I'm from an MMA background. I want to be in the ring all the time, training, getting in reps. And then when I'd be there, and say I'd go to a seminar or do this, and people are talking, and I'm like, I don't want to talk, like I want to wrestle. But then you realize, like even now, me, like I when I do a seminar, I wrestle every single person. I try to go 1 minute with every single person that shows up, and I also talk. But at that time, I think I just wanted to be in the ring all the time. I wanted to do all the crazy stunts and spots and everything. I really wasn't understanding the psychology part of it, which is probably the biggest part of professional wrestling. And I realized that the first time I walked out through a curtain. Before that, I'm like, yeah, I can do all the moves, I can do a match. And I walk out the curtain and there's just a bunch of people staring at me, but I don't know what to do. And I do know what to do, but I don't know what to do. And it's awkward. And that took some time. And I'd say I try to tell people this professional wrestling, I fought MMA, I fought in the UFC. Mixed martial arts is extremely hard, grueling for sure. But pro wrestling is probably the hardest thing to be really good at because you can't control it, but you can't control it. You can be told the same advice a million times and not understand it until the millionth time. And I'm like, hey, be yourself, but turn it up. And people tell you that, and I remember being told that 100 times, and I was like, I have no idea what that means. I'm like, I'm me. What do you mean? And then eventually one day you see a video of yourself and you're you, but you're like way more animated and working around. And you're like, oh, that's what I've been. I get it now. Me turned up. It doesn't mean me screaming. It just means me more animated, more just like when you're in the ring and you're taking a punch. If you see me get punched in the UFC, I usually never even made a face. I'd just be like, like that didn't hurt, right? And but in pro wrestling, and I, make a scene. I had to let the world know you touched me. So there's a lot of differences. I think that was my biggest like hurdle when I got into professional wrestling because when I started, it felt like I was at home. I could hit backbreaker suplexes, this, that, and the other thing, but I didn't know how to connect with the crowd yet.
When you first got there, having this background that you had, you obviously have a huge advantage over others, as anybody who has been very successful in another field has that advantage. Did WWE have interest in you right away?
Yeah, I think I got to try out. Brisco also helped with that. I think Sean Waltman also helped. I had a lot of people. Monster Factory was a great place for if you're already kind of known. Monster Factory, you're just a spotlight was thrown right on me, and I think within a month or so, I got a try with WWE.
And how did that go? Where did you have the tryout? And did right away, did they say that we're going to try to bring you in to do something with
Uh,
you?
No, the trial went great, swimmingly. Monster Factory told me exactly what I needed to do when I got there. Yes, sir, no, sir. My name, speak up, be happy. Forward roll, back roll, got it. Right. But when I was there, I think they took some pictures of me. I have like a huge magic mushroom on my rib cage, and they're like, "What's that?" I'm like, ah. And then they looked at my past. They're like, "Why did you get fired from the UFC for failing a drug test for cannabis?" And at that time, medical marijuana and cannabis was still very taboo. And they're like, hey, you're great. You got a great look, this, that, but we're going to have to pass. And I was like, okay, no, don't get me wrong. I still talked to them and they were nice. And then at the time, they were working with a guy named Canyon Seaman. I know he's not working there anymore. I don't think he might be
Right.
back.
No,
I have no
no,
idea.
he's
I don't work.
gone.
No.
Yeah, he's good. But he hit me up and was like, hey, have you ever considered working for a company called Evolve? And I've never heard of Evolve. It was an indie, and now, funny enough, Evolve. And if you look at what's going to be on WWE Evolve, because that's where it came from, But I was like, you know what? I'm only working random indies. I'll do whatever you got. If WWE tells me, even if it's a maybe, I'm gonna do it, right? So I started working for Evolve, and I worked with Gabe Spilowski, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And honestly, we hit it off right off the bat. He understood me when we first talked. He kind of wanted to present me to the Evolve audience as like a Ken Shamrock character because of my look and my background. But then after we talked for a few minutes on the telephone, he was like, "You're nothing like Ken Shamrock, are you?" And I'm like, "Nah, dude. Like, I'm like a laid back kind of dude that can like kick your ass, Like, I'm way more chill. I'm not gonna like punch myself in the face and scream. There's nothing wrong with that. That's just not my style. It's not my style. And we worked very well together. And honestly, I would say Gabe very much so helped me ease my way into the indies because you can't just be thrown in the deep end and ease my way where I gradually got better and better. The fans started gradually respecting me more and more until I was one of the top guys on the independent scene working all over the world.
Did your knowledge, and not jumping, meaning to jump forward a little bit, but I've been really
Oh,
impressed with you and Nick Nemeth, how you guys have handled the indies. I mean, to me, you're the two best out there, both talent wise, but also being able to handle a million different indie promoters. Is this where you learned it? Because you had to do with real shitty indies with the
oh,
MMA, and then you dealt with the indies when you got into WWE without, I'm sorry, into wrestling without much
yeah.
knowledge of it. Is that where you learned it?
Well, I say there's two different versions and two different ways. Like originally when I was dealing with independent promoters, whatever, a ham sandwich, a match, and a flight, I'm there. You know what I'm saying? Now it's a little different. I was like, hey, I've wrestled at WrestleMania a couple times, held a couple titles. I'm kind of a big deal. So the negotiation process is definitely way different now. But I always try to be easy to work with. And you also got to realize, depending on where you work, and I think, depending on where you're working, what's hot, what's not, you might take a hit here to do this, or you might want to do this for more because you're like, dude, like, not trying to be there, and it's not like it's gonna really elevate me to a certain level. So like even back in the day when I was on the Indies, PWG, Pro Wrestling Gorilla, was the indie to be a part of. And I loved it. I loved working there. I loved going to Reseda. I loved wrestling in that little hot building and people going nuts. I loved it. But I think and I had some of the best matches of my career there, and I got to wrestle some of the best wrestlers in the world there.
Mm.
Saying that, because they had such a super show with the best wrestlers in the world flying from Japan and all over the world, there wasn't that much money to go around. But the opportunity, the rub, was more valuable than $500. Like I would cancel a $500 payday back then to be like, I have to do PWG. These Blu-rays are going to go all over the world, to Germany, to everywhere, and these people are going to know me and want me on their shows and pay me even more, and kind of like, and that was like the rub then. And then I got the rub with WWE, so times that by a little more, but like same thing, and like, but I think you got to work certain places to get somewhere, right? I believe right now GCW is very much that place, that beater for WWE. But I know GCW is not breaking the bank, or I don't think they can. It's independent companies only have so much wiggle room and money.
Right.
But I also believe that's like kind of the proving ground at the moment for the raw independent scene.
Yeah, it's hard to get over anywhere, as you know. And if you can
Yeah,
get over
yeah,
anywhere, you can get over other places. It's just people don't realize that. They just want to go straight
right.
to WWE, but they don't realize if you can get over somewhere, that
Get
separates
over it.
you
Yeah,
from 99% of the rest
But
of the talent because you got over somewhere. And I don't give a damn if that's a little
yeah,
small territory in the middle of Nevada. I don't care. If you can get over, you can get over. And that's hard to do.
it is.
yeah.
It's not easy. Also, this is a conversation I had with Randy. Randy, one time we were doing our shows, killing it. Everybody's chanting our stuff. Okay, bro, we're leading sales and merch, killing it. And I go, Randy, dude, I think we're pretty over, dude. And he goes, we're not over. And I'm like, come on, don't be hard on us, dude. We're killing it, bro. And he's like, Hulk Hogan was over. Rock's over. Stone Cold is over. We're not over. And I was like, all right, I guess you're right. Like, I
That's
guess,
great.
dude.
Yeah,
But
that's just the drive that he has, isn't it?
Oh, that's right. Hey, my first time hearing of Randy, I was in a above ground train with his dad, Bob Orton. His dad and I were tag team partners in Japan, and we've had too much to drink. We don't know where we are.
I know.
We're on one of the JR trains or something above ground. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. And he looks over at me and goes, "I got this kid," and I said, "Yes, sir." He goes, "Randy." He goes, "He's 12 years old." He goes, I don't get it. Everything's cool. What's cool? I don't know what cool is." He goes, "I think he's special." And in a good
ah,
way. And I said, years later, I called Bob. I said, "Bob, that kid is special." But
Yeah.
it was so cool to hear his dad talk about Randy back when he was 12. So I go, I think this kid is special, and he meant
that,
it in an incredibly positive way. And
that's so good.
good Lord, is he?
Yeah. Matt, when you got the call to come back to WWE, you were assigned Orlando NXT. Did you put in much time there? Did because you're gaining experience on the road to independent. You had to be so
So
far ahead of these guys when
yeah.
you came back.
Well, I think with NXT or even WWE TV in general, they want to tailor you and kind of groom you in the sense of how they work and with commercials and etc. So with things like that, but I was always like in the back of my head. I'm like, even on the indies, like I'm working the crowd, but in the back of my head, I'm also working the handhelds. I'm working a hard cam if they have it, etc. So for me, it's always about working the camera. I think that's a. I got a compliment when I did my first Rumble. Most people in Rumbles don't work the camera. They're just like trying to beat up the next guy. And what Dunn is it? Kevin Dunn?
Kevin Dunn.
Yeah,
Kevin.
I'm bad with names. Kevin Dunn,
A brilliant producer, by the way.
Absolutely
yeah,
Kevin.
brilliant.
yeah, but he gave me a very good compliment, being like, "You worked the camera the whole time. Anytime somebody's coming up the ramp, even if you're fighting, you're looking over, like giving an expression, And so working the camera and stuff was very important to me. But when I first got there, I think it was mostly just stick to your times, which I'm either on time or under. I'm always that kind of guy. I never go over. I try not to, and. So I think when I got there it was quite easy. And NXT is a little freer in the sense of even a guy like me, if I'm strong enough to do something, I can do it. Well, when I got up to main roster, I was kind of, I wouldn't say like held back in a way, but like if I'm wrestling like Otis, even though I can pick Otis up and like do moves to him, they're like, you're not picking up Otis. He's a big guy, right? Which, makes sense, especially when you look at WWE's audience and you're catering to the world and everything else. It makes more sense. It does. I know some people don't like it, but it makes sense. And trust me, it works. Look at where they are. Like, they know what they're doing.
No kidding.
But
And
yeah, go
go ahead.
ahead.
From NXT, when you got to NXT, right away, did you enjoy your time there? Was that something that you thought, hey, I'm fitting in now? This is the place that I wanted to be, and you saw that you're going to have a progression up to the main roster with WWE?
Yeah, I think there's a big difference between me and a lot of the people that go through NXT. I went to NXT. I love NXT. It was great. I enjoy the match style. I love the format. I like the intensity. I like the up and comers. I love all of that. One thing is though, I didn't come here to wrestle in NXT for 4 years. I came here to get to the main roster. I'm here to wrestle WrestleMania. So for me, I feel like a lot of guys, and you've seen other guys that are great wrestlers, say like Adam Cole and other people from Undisputed and just others, even Tommaso. And now he's on main roster now. But a lot of guys spend a lot of time in NXT.
Right.
Well, NXT was a pit stop. I loved it. I loved being there. I loved the energy, loved the fans, loved the match style. But at the end of the day, my goal was to be on that main roster, to be at WrestleMania's, Royal Rumble, SummerSlam, to be there, be on that truck. That was the goal. So for me, I loved my time there. I loved working with Sean. I loved working with everybody. I had a multitude of great coaches.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I really just wanted to get to that main roster.
How did you get along with Finley?
Finley, I get along with Finley. I know his wife and everything.
Yeah,
I teach jujitsu down here at Rudo's Jiu-Jitsu here in Orlando, and Fit usually, Dave stops by occasionally.
yeah. I was with Dave for 2 years in Europe. I think the world of Dave. I think he's such a great coach, and I know Dave well enough to know that he sees a guy like you and he sees dollar signs. He's the
Yeah.
perfect trainer for a guy like you because Dave to me is one of the best trainers, one
Yeah,
of the best
I,
guys in the
I
world.
think when I was down at NXT, I don't think he was training, or if he was doing NXT UK. Because when I was there, NXT was split up into they were
Right.
doing all those other versions. But whenever I've trained with Dave and been around Dave, we've been nothing but friendly. He actually came to my Halloween party last year.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah,
What
yeah.
was what was he dressed like?
Yeah. What was he dressed as?
Oh no, he didn't dress up. He wore a collared shirt. You know.
That curmudgeon.
When you're Dave Finley, you don't need to
What a
dress up.
curmudgeon.
Yeah. I didn't make that year. It was a baby shower / Halloween party, so I didn't make anybody dress up. This past year was a Halloween party. You had to dress up. Dave didn't make it this year though. So
Did he dress up in this year?
no, he didn't. He didn't make it this year. I think he was busy doing something.
What a damn curmudgeon.
Now you're called up to the main roster and everything. How long did it take for you and Randy to kind of bond? Because you could see, I mean, as an old timer, and I'm sure the fans out there, you could see you guys had a really good relationship, really good friendship. Did that develop along the line, or was it automatic? Those magnets that kind of draw to each other.
I would say when me and Randy first met, he disliked me a lot. Uh, I don't know what to say. It's really good for pro wrestling. People usually either really like me or love me, or they really dislike me. So for pro wrestling, it's great. Nobody's on the fence, right? Uh, but when you're in the locker room, it can't be good all the time. But when Randy first met me, I guess I didn't go over and shake Randy's hand. I must have thought he was busy or something. And he took it as disrespect. He's from a different time, a different era. And the first thing he said to me, Ben, he goes, the first time I met you, do you know what I thought to myself? I go, what? He goes, how the F can I get this kid fired?
That's
And I
great.
was like, Randy, come on, dude. But I would say the first time we actually he started to get me and enjoy me was I had a promo with Asuka and I forgot my lines. I thought it was a recording and we're just going through the motions and I forgot my lines. I was just, so I scoot down on my scooter and I'm like, hey, Asuka, hey, if scooter's big in Japan, is Japan? And I'm like, I forgot what I was saying. And then I look over at the cameras and they're like, come on, get off set. And I'm like, what? and I ride up and I was like, was that live? Because it's like Thunderdome, and I didn't know. And they're like, yeah, that was live. And I'm like, no, I'm gonna get yelled at. I had to talk about robot fights and underground Tokyo and this, that, and the other thing, and I messed it all up. It was the verbiage wasn't great, but I still messed it all up. And I'm walking back to the locker room pretty on my scooter, scooting back, like kind of sad. And Randy sees me, he goes, hey, Riddle, I don't know if that shit was on purpose, but that was your best promo yet, kid. And I'm just like, I lose it. I die laughing. Other people around die laughing. And then, but then, he started being nicer to me, and I was always nice to him. And everybody also thought that promo was hilarious. And then me and Randy started talking. And then honestly, the Arcade Bro thing happened randomly. Uh, I was just talking to one of the producers, and I was like, "Hey, how cool would it be if me and Randy teamed up and we were RK Bro, right? Because I'm a bro, it's like an O." And then they all laughed at me, told me I was kind of stupid, and I was like, "All right, guys, whatever." And then a couple weeks later, after WrestleMania, I was scheduled to team up with Drew to take on Retribution. They were making their debut as a team, and I was supposed to take the fall, right? I'm the guy, And Randy was supposed to wrestle Braun Strowman and get into a feud with him. Well, with Randy's back being the way it is, he didn't want to really get into a feud with Braun. And then they pitched my name, and Randy was like, "Yes." And then me and Randy had our one match. He enjoyed working with me enough where he's like, dude, I want to work with this guy every week. And then we did the team, which was only supposed to last like 2 weeks. And it ended up lasting like almost like a couple of years.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, but dude, anything I ever did from the US title, I wasn't supposed to win that. But Keith Lee got COVID, unfortunately. And I was the next guy in line. And then even with the tag titles with Randy, that wasn't supposed to happen. It was just we were doing well. We were super over. We had great chemistry. I loved spending time with him. He loved spending time with me. It was awesome. And I'll say it again, and I don't know if Randy would still agree, but Randy at that time, and I couldn't agree more. He said that was the most fun he's ever had in his career. And I can honestly say I have a lot of fun in my career every day of my life. That was probably the most fun I've ever had in my entire career. We were tagging, just making each other laugh, playing video games together. Just it was fun, and we were making a lot of people happy.
I
You,
can tell
you
you,
know,
I was I
Matt,
was there.
go ahead, Don.
I was there when Randy, broke in. Of course, I had the great association, because of his dad. I knew Randy very well through his dad, and so I've watched his entire career. That was the most fun I've ever seen him have in the ring. I mean, that
Yeah.
was one of the most entertaining. I used to love it because I just sit and do commentary. And what sucks is when you have a team that's not very interesting. because and without a good background, there's nothing you could talk about. You can only talk about so many arm drags, flips, suplexes. You guys, it was just fun. You didn't even have to talk. You just had to let you guys do what you wanted to do.
I appreciate it. Honestly, it was probably, and I wrestle with a lot of friends and colleagues that I get along with. But for some reason, when we dude, backstage, on stage, dude, hanging out with the Migos, hanging out with whoever, like you name it. Like it was we had a vibe. It's a thing, and I still keep in touch with Randy, not as much as either one of us probably like because he's got a lot going on. I have a lot going on, but I know he's doing good. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
As a fan, and I've known both of you for such a long, long time already, just about all of his entire life. I got pictures of him out here riding jet skis with my son when they were both pre-teen, probably 7, 8 years old. But I could tell that Randy really relaxed with you more so than he ever had in his entire career. You could
Yeah.
tell Randy finally started having fun in the business through all the success Randy Orton had when he teamed with you. And I watch your work just seem to elevate and elevate. When you're rubbing shoulders with somebody like Randy Orton, you're in a match with him night after night. Those you pick up those things, you pick up those sequences, and you add them to your repertoire. And I think that tag team was a benefit to both of you. Where Randy's having a good time for a change in his career, and you're elevating your work rate. Did you feel the same way?
I felt I couldn't agree more. And during those times, Randy was, he had his back issues, and he was going through a lot of pain at that time. And I would take most of the moves, do whatever, but I would do it 1,000 times over again, because what he did for me. And I know Randy thanks me all the time for what I did for him, but it's like what he did for me, dude. I have a life, like I can take care of my kids because we teamed. And it might sound funny to somebody else, but dude, like it really has helped me out. I've won multiple titles all around the world. I'm very well respected. And granted, I fought in the UFC and I've wrestled. I've won titles on my own. But the connection we made of being friends on TV to others was monumental. I know for a fact because it's been years since we've even been on TV together, and people still ask about us all the time and what we're doing and this, that. Is there any shot of you guys getting back? And I always just go, maybe one day, I would say yes. I'm pretty sure Randy would say yes too, but, only time will tell.
And that was a great time for Randy. I remember talking, because of my friendship with his dad, Bob, Randy was, he was debating whether to keep wrestling, because of his back. He didn't know what to do. He obviously he's made a lot of money. I guess he's taking care of it. I don't want to speak for him, but he needed something like this. This not only rejuvenated him, gave him something that he loved. Obviously, he has a lot of trust in you, which is pretty cool. That for you, when a guy like anybody has trust in somebody else, it's pretty cool. But you also extended Randy's career probably several years because of this. And not only the rejuvenation of Randy's spirit, but also his body was allowed to heal and be able to keep up because you were able to go out there and take a lot of the bumps for Randy.
Yeah. And I would do it again. Heartbeat.
Who came up with a scooter?
That was Vince. The animals that came out of my feet and the scooter were all Vince's ideas. I had no say in what animals came out. I did have a say in the scooter I rode though. I upgraded. I started off with a Razor, but I upgraded to a super trick scooter that like anybody could ride, like a 500-pound person could ride. It was built tough. So it was good. Now Briscoe, now I wanted to bring up one of the first times we hung out. I don't know if you remember Legends Camp.
No, tell me.
Okay, so North Carolina.
What do you do to me to make me not remember?
No, 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 no. It was
Jerry
a
doesn't remember
crazy.
the 70s or 80s either.
This
I
was a
got a slight
crazy.
memory lapse of
It
70s.
was a crazy story. So we were at Legends Camp. You were helping coach and judge and do a couple things, and I was there as a student of the camp. And it was later at night. There was like a dinner and drinks at the bar. So we're all having a couple cocktails, nothing crazy. And I'm standing at the bar, and you're standing at the bar, and Phil Baroni, MMA fighter, comes up to me and calls me a slur. And I'm like, whoa, that's not cool. And then Phil Baroni tries to fight me at the bar at Legends Camp. And then you and a couple other guys grab Phil Baroni because I'm acting like, dude, what are you doing? You're acting like a fool, right? Like I'm talking, I'm not going to fight him though. And you guys all grab him and drag him back. And he flips out, makes a scene and everything. And then you came over and you're like, you handled that perfect. You know, that guy, he'll never work in this business. And he really never did,
They
because
never
he was
did.
extremely unprofessional. But I wanted to remind you that you broke up a fight that I almost got into at Legends Camp. And funny side note, Phil Baroni's actually in jail in Mexico. He murdered somebody. So thank you. I could have been murdered. So you saved my life. You saved my
I
life.
saved your life. Wow. I'll expect the check in the mail soon. Then.
Yeah, it'll be
or,
there.
or, or at least when I see a drink for me
Oh,
at the bar.
definitely a drink when I see you.
For Brisco to break up a fight, that's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, well, he
He's
just
usually the
got
one that's instigating the fight.
no way.
I remember the thing I remember. I got into a little row with Scott Steiner in Charlotte one night, and all of a sudden I look behind me and there's Matt Riddle sitting right on my shoulder, man. If anything would have happened, I know Scott's a tough SOB, but if anything would have happened, that guy we're talking to would have been right on top of him.
Yeah, I got your back. You got mine. I got yours, bro.
Matt, I've seen Vince, for so many years, and being a commentator, I got to be part of, creative and all the meetings and stuff. Vince is like a mad genius when he gets someone like you because he gets to have fun. A normal character that comes in and it's kind of a template, but you are not a template. Vince is like the mad genius going, okay, we're gonna get him flip flops. He's gonna kick off. We're gonna get him a scooter. Did you enjoy working with Vince?
I loved it. I enjoyed it. I will say this: Vince has his visions. You
Yep.
get and I also I'm not hard to work with in the sense like if you have a vision, I might give you suggestions. If you have your vision, you have your vision. But there's been a couple times where me and Vince have butted heads a little bit. He liked my Riddle character to always be happy, always, which means even if I lost, even if it's in the script, it looked like I should be unhappy. Say it with a smile. And one of them, one time I had a black eye from getting curb stomped by Seth Rollins, and I was talking to Keith Lee, and in the promo, and everybody liked that. I was like, yeah, I got a black eye. But hey, I watched like Air Bud 2 and 3, and I'm happy now. Like whatever the verbiage was. And Vince called me and he goes, why were you sad? And I was like, well, because he stomped my face and I have a black eye. And he goes, Riddle wouldn't be sad. Riddle doesn't care. And I was like, all right. And then the only other time we butted heads, and it was the last time, was Brandy got hurt and was out. Like he had to get the surgery. He was going to be out for an extended period of time. He wasn't going to be back for like a while. And I had to cut a promo and then challenge the bloodline and kind of continue the story with just me, right? And when I started talking about Randy, I started getting emotional and sad, because he's actually hurt. He's actually my friend. Like these are all real things. And I came to the back. Everybody thought it was a great promo. When I got to the back, I didn't even get to Vince before Bruce pulled me aside and was like, you fucked up. And I was like, oh no. And then he explained to me, like, dude, like, what were you doing? I was like, I'm sorry. I was just going from the heart. And that's what happened. And then I went into Vince, talked to Vince, and he was like, what was that? Riddle's happy and this and that. You were supposed to bring the crowd up. And I did, but not as much as I could have while being happy. And I go, I'm sorry, like Randy's my friend and this and that. And he looked at me, pulled me in, he goes, does Randy sign your checks or do I? And I go, you do. And he goes, do we have to have this talk again? I was like, never again. And that was it. I'm usually pretty good. You tell me once, I listen. So, especially like that, especially if you're Vince. So,
Right. Well, Matt, now you are literally everywhere I go, I see you, and
We
you're
see each other often,
all the time. I go down to Mexico, and you're there. You had that incredible match. I told Gerald Brisco about when the guy put you in the chair and called some crazy spot and damn near killed him and you. I'm still not sure what it was. When the guy was going to jump in you were outside in the ring.
bro, Triple A.
Yeah.
Nothing but respect. Nothing but respect. They matched me up with this guy. The guy seemed nice enough. This dude, so like, I'll do a dive, whatever, whoever trails, he goes, I'll do a dive, throw you in the ring, do whatever moves. I go, okay. He dives on me, I sell. Then he hits me with a chair and then sits me in the chair. And I'm like sitting there. I'm like, oh, is he gonna like run and beat me or something? Then he runs into the ring, starts clapping, and I know he's gonna dive. And I'm like, what's he doing? He's gonna dive on me. And I'm like, all right. And I look at the ring, I go, I'm pretty far away. And dude charges, runs, goes to dive, lands right at my feet.
Yeah.
Just crashes. And then
right at your feet.
Right
at your feet.
Yeah, and then I don't know what to do. I'm like, do I sell my shins? Do I just fire up? Like, what do I do? So I sold my feet. I was like, oh, my ankles, like, and he was messed up and then botched basically everything. And then when I came to the back, I remember Conan being like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, bro." And then they gave me my check and I left.
It was tremendous. I told Jerry about it as soon as I got back. I saw the guy put you in the chair, and you're 10 feet from the ring or whatever it is, and the guy's starting to run. I'm going, there's no human. Usain Bolt couldn't get to Matt Riddle from where this guy put the chair down.
And then I'm like, in my head was I supposed to cut him off? Like, I don't speak Spanish, man. Like you get.
And I'm sitting in the back with all the luchadors, and I'm looking around, going, "Does anybody else not see a problem here? There's a serious issue out there."
Yeah, that was a good one.
You had a triple threat down there, though. It was one of the best I've ever seen. Oh my goodness!
With the Laredo Kid and Commander.
That thing was absolutely freaking amazing. I told Gerald about that too when I got back at one of the separate time, whatever it was. That was freaking amazing.
Yeah, there's a lot of good competition down in Mexico. All over the world. Really, it's just finding these gems. And AAA is one of them. I like CMLL as well. In America, I rock MLW. You've been there multiple times. It's great. I do. We sell out everywhere we go, and it's once a month.
It's amazing how hot the wrestling business is, not just for WWE, but for everybody. I mean, where we go, you're selling out, and you're a main event, you're champion in a lot of places that I am. Dude, the ones that you're not, Nick Nemeth is. So you guys pretty much have a monopoly on the entire independent scene.
We really do. We really do. Honestly, funny enough, we wrestled for the first time one-on-one the other day. And
really?
Dude, this promotion was ACW, I believe. Awesome Championship Wrestling. Dude, production, the nines, catering, the nines.
Really?
Dude, bro. But the start of my 2025, it was every show has had catering and hotel, and I know this sounds like it should, right? But catering, hotel, you name it, it had it. They paid me ahead of time. I was like, what's happening in 2025? Like, wrestling is amazing. It is thriving right now.
Yeah, absolutely thriving. And with WWE, going to Netflix, the terrestrial TV stations, that's a huge void that somebody's going to fill.
Dude. That's funny you bring that up, and I got a feeling it's gonna get filled. I keep my ear pretty low to the ground, and I don't hear Buffalo. I hear scuttlebutt, and I'm telling you, I feel like there might be promotions we don't even know about to pop up and happen, especially with all this open TV space.
Right. It's really hard work what you're doing. And what I mean is not just the wrestling and the travel. That's hard enough. But you got to handle logistics. And I say logistics, I don't just mean travel logistics, hotel, car, stuff like that. You got to handle a million different promotions.
Dude, I know.
Unbelievable. And you got to be able to massage these guys. You got to be able to get to one place. You can't.
Do you know my least favorite part about it? I love wrestling. I love traveling. I love doing all this. You know what my least favorite part is? you miss one show there and there. It's national news. Everybody wants to make a stink about it. It's like, dude,
Yeah.
I wrestled like 100+ times last year, let alone meet and greets and other things. I stay busy, bro. If I miss 5 shows out of 120 out of the year, eat it. I don't care. And then like, dude, I want to see how I want to see these perfect people. This
Yeah.
is what I
Yeah.
want because I am very far from perfect, but I do the best I can, and that's it, dude. It's you know what it's like, JBL. When you're in demand, Brisco, you know what it's like when you're in demand. You're making your rent. You do everything. You sacrifice family. You sacrifice holidays, time, vacations, weddings, everything. And then if you miss one show, it's like, you son of a
Yeah.
bitch.
You're the worst human being on the
Yeah.
planet.
Yeah.
Oh, dude,
And what you're doing, you have to do everything. You have to do travel, you have to do hotels, you have to do transportation once you get there, and then what you said, the different things you got to handle. Not only all the politics, but you got to handle those dressing rooms because here you are, an outsider coming into somebody else's dressing room, trying to take one of those guys' top spots, and some of the guys don't look at that as very friendly, right?
yeah. Yeah, they sure don't. They sure don't. I get a mixed review when I come in. Most people are extremely kind, nice, and stoked to meet me. Hey, can I get a picture? But then there's that other group, and it's usually that upper end, the higher end independent wrestler that should have got their break but hasn't yet. Kind of right there. It could happen any day, might never happen. Those guys, a
They can
lot of
be
them,
mad. They can be
they're
mad at
mad.
the world.
Yeah.
Dude, they're mad, especially at a guy like me. They're like, "You're a piece of garbage. You just flounder everything, bro." And I'm like, "Shut up, dude." That's I can.
Yeah, because you don't deserve it. You just had a great career run in the UFC. You had a great run in the WWE. Won championships all over the world. So you don't deserve it. They're right about that. They've worked a little territory their entire lives, and they're mad at you for coming in and drawing a hell of a house.
Yeah.
And I will say that that is one thing I pride myself on. I do draw one hell of a house. And I was in Pennsylvania the
Yes,
other
you do.
day.
I will say that every show I've been on that you've been on has been sold out. Every single show.
I don't care what the internet or Twitter says. If I'm booked on a show, it usually sells out. And I don't think I've been on a show that hasn't sold out since I've been released over a year ago. So, food for thought. And it's been a great year. The 2024 was a great, great year. 2025 already started great, winning the MLW Heavyweight Championship, won a AAW Championship, won a brooch. I won a brooch. Somebody made a bro championship before I even got to the show. They go, "You're champion. You're defending it tonight." I'm like, "Do I win?" And they're like, "What do you think?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I got the bro. It's been great, and it's only gonna get better.
Yeah.
And is there a plan for what you're going to do next? I mean, do you are you enjoying so much what you're doing? You're making obviously a lot of money. Do you want to go back to WWE? Is there a goal there or a
I
plan
mean,
there?
I would love to go back to WWE one day, eventually, maybe soon, maybe. But the thing is, whenever they want it. It's not up to me. That's their decision. If it was up to me, I would have been there yesterday. I never would have left. But it's up to them. That's their decision making, and I respect whatever decision they make. Till then, I'm going to win every championship possible. I'm going to
There you
wrestle
go.
everywhere under the sun in every country. I know I'm going to be in Australia, Europe. I know just in the next couple months, I'm going to probably go to like 8 different countries, wrestle like 20, 30 different places, and do my thing. Sometimes it gets to be a lot, but at the end of the day, what is it? Edge, rated R superstar said to me once. Motion is lotion. And I also believe if I stay still too long, I get stagnant, I get lazy, I get tired. I kind of need to keep myself, moving, kind of like a shark. I need to keep swimming or I'm just gonna die. So for me, not literally, metaphorically.
That's right.
But I think I just gotta keep moving, keep hustling, keep working hard, keep doing the right thing, and just that's all I can really do. And I even before I got to WWE, I was working really hard, and I said to people, they go, if you never get to WWE, will you be sad?" And I'm like, "No." And then they go, why? I go, because I feel like even now, even after WWE, I feel like I'm like a cult classic, you know? I'm not everybody's taste, you know, their cup of tea, but when I am, I'm definitely your cup of tea. You definitely want to see me. I'm like a B-rate horror movie like people love, like Evil Dead or Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I'm not mainstream all the time, but I touch mainstream, and I have a following that will follow me probably for a long, long time.
Well, you're my cup of tea because I think you're one
Yeah,
of the
my
good
cup.
guys,
You're my cup of tea, bro.
and I'm so happy for you. I'm so every time I get to see you, I smile because I just think you're awesome.
Likewise, I don't lie, and honestly, every time I see you, JBL, you make me smile, and I feel very good. And I also feel good because I know if you're there and I'm there, we're in a good place.
We're doing
You know,
something well. That's
doing
right.
something good.
Well, Matt, hey, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank
I
you.
know we took a ton of time and we had to have a cancellation because you had some family issues. So thank you. I'm glad the family issues okay first.
Yeah.
Family's good, everybody's well, and I'm glad we got to do this. We should do this more often. You know what I'm saying? This was a good little chat. You
We
know.
we
That
would
was
we would
great.
love that.
Hell yeah. Well, hey, we're in touch. You guys got my number. Let's try to make this happen more often than not.